Hey guys, welcome back. I'll be honest, I had a totally different video planned for today. In fact, it was already recorded and partially edited, and maybe I'll revisit it, but I think this takes precedent. The original was about Sony and a recap of sorts and my thoughts on the whole Helldivers 2 thing. If you still want me to do a video about that, let me know in the comments. But I put that aside immediately. I was out doing some errands at the time, and on the way home and stopped for lunch with them. I opened up my phone as I was eating, and I see this news that Xbox is heavily going to town on several of Bethesda's subsidiary companies or underlings, if you will. Just an absolute, so it's like some of this makes a little bit of sense in that if you were to sit down and cold logic your way through it, you could come up with some reasons. One of these is a little harder and sticks out like a sore thumb. Nevertheless, the studios that are affected here, if you haven't already heard, are Redfall and Dishonored developer Arcane Austin. That's going to close, unfortunately, in the online. Redfall is no longer going to be updated any further. Alpha Dog Games are also going to close. They were more on the mobile side with Mighty Doom. Roundhouse Studios are going to be merged with the Elder Scrolls Online developer ZeniMax. And the one that sticks out and it's got everyone particularly confused is Hi-Fi Rush and the Evil Within developer Tango Gameworks is being closed. And that one is just, that one's a real head scratcher, to say the least. This all just happened a few hours ago, and it comes on the back of some breaking news by IGN and others. As Matt Booty, who's the head of Xbox Game Studios, had sent out an email that then got passed, obviously, onto the press, and now here we are. Everyone's been talking about it ever since. I do have the email here. It's a little lengthy, but I think it's an important read, and then we'll talk a bit more about this, and I'll give my thoughts on this for whatever those thoughts are worth. So here's the email. Today, I am sharing changes we are making to our Bethesda and ZeniMax teams. These changes are grounded in prioritizing high-impact titles and further investing in Bethesda's portfolio of blockbuster games and beloved worlds which you have nurtured over many decades. That opening paragraph already, I'm already stepping in here, but sidebar, that opening paragraph is probably going to be the most quoted out of this whole blessed thing because it says an awful lot, and I don't think it says an awful lot in a way that's going to make almost anyone happy. Everyone's going to scrutinize the hell out of that sentence. I think Matt Booty's in for getting his booty kicked, if you know what I mean. To double down on these franchises and invest to build new ones requires us to look across the business to identify the opportunities that are best positioned for success. This reprioritization of titles and resources means a few teams will be realigned to others and that some of our colleagues will be leaving us. Here are the changes going into effect. Arcane Austin. This studio will close with some members of the team joining other studios to work on other projects or work on projects across Bethesda. Arcane Austin has a history of making impactful and innovative games, and it is a pedigree that everyone should be proud of. Oh, Matt. Redfall's previous update will be its last as we end all development on the game. The game and its servers will remain online for players to enjoy, and we will provide make-good offers to players who purchased the Hero DLC. Sidebar, that was discussed. You can look those up as to what that's going to be. There's some refundy type things going on, I think, to some degree. There are some offers being made to players that fall into that category. Also, it was discovered that future updates on Redfall were being worked on as recently as only 5 hours ago. So people were working on those updates right up until they heard this news. Alpha Dog Studios. This studio will also close. We appreciate the team's creativity in bringing Doom to new players. Mighty Doom will be sunset on August 7th, and we will begin turning off the ability for players to make any purchases in the game. Tango Gameworks. Tango Gameworks will also close. We are thankful for their contributions to Bethesda and players around the world. Hi-Fi Rush will continue to be available to players on the platforms it is today. That is such a short and almost insulting close to Tango Gameworks. And we'll have more. I'll have more to say on that. I got to get through this email first. Roundhouse Games. The team at Roundhouse Games will be joining ZeniMax Online Studios. Roundhouse has played a key role in many of our recent game launches and bringing them into ZeniMax Online Studios to work on the Elder Scrolls Online will mean we can do even more to grow the world that millions of players call home. With this consolidation of our Bethesda studio teams so that we can invest more deeply in our portfolio of games and new IP, a small number of roles across select Bethesda publishing and corporate teams will also be eliminated. Those whose roles will be impacted will be notified today, and we ask that you please treat your departing colleagues with respect and compassion. We will provide our full support to those who are impacted in today's notifications and through their transitions, including severance benefits informed by local laws. And when they say that typically means the absolute bare minimum of whatever they can get away with, as they say, by local law. These changes are not a reflection of the creativity and skill of the talented individuals at these teams or the risks they took to try new things. I acknowledge that these changes are also disruptive to the various support teams across ZeniMax and Bethesda that bring our games to market. We are making these tough decisions to create capacity, to increase investment in other parts of our portfolio and focus on our priority games. Bethesda remains one of the key pillars of Xbox with a strong portfolio of amazing games and thriving communities. As we look to the future, there is an impressive lineup of games on the horizon. In 2024 alone, we have Starfield, Shattered Space, Fallout 76, Skyline Valley, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, The Elder Scrolls Online's Golden Road. As we align our plans and resources to best set ourselves up for success in this complex and changing industry, our teams across Arcane Lion, Bethesda Game Studios, id Software, Machine Games, ZeniMax Online Studios, and the Bethesda publishing and corporate teams will be well positioned to build new IP, explore new game concepts, and expand on our existing franchises. Matt. So there's the email that was sent out, and in a really odd, but also I guess it makes sense because they're all under Bethesda type way. All of the sad JPEGs sent out on these individual developer Twitter accounts and social media, they all look the same. Like Tango's the same white box with just the same font from all the other studios. Today it was announced that Tango Gameworks will close. Thank you to everyone that explored the worlds we created. Hi-Fi Rush, along with Tango's previous titles, will remain available and playable everywhere they are today. Okay. So there's all of your context. So let me start by saying this. Go fuck yourself, Xbox. Go fuck yourself. I think that's warranted. Microsoft has posted phenomenal record profits. Xbox as a leg of Microsoft has felt free to save themselves from self-inflicted wounds over the last several years by spending daddy Microsoft money to purchase a $70 billion Activision Blizzard. And the rewards for studios like Tango, who admittedly by Microsoft and Xbox themselves praised heavily. This one, Hi-Fi Rush won a ton of awards. It sold well. It just got placed on, on other platforms like PlayStation. It hit every metric that Microsoft and Xbox were looking for, while being a new IP under a Japanese developer, which is a developer and market that Microsoft and Xbox have been struggling to be able to even get a minor foothold in for decades now. And their response to that is to close the studio down, which is fucking insane. It's insane. You can't expect every single game that gets released to make $1 billion fucking dollars in profit. You just can't, excuse my French. It's just absolutely ludicrous. Who in their right mind, with the absolute PR nightmare that Xbox has been yo-yo fighting, with Phil Spencer going out looking like a sad, dejected, kicked fucking puppy for the last 5 years, and you best believe the sad Phil puppy dog shit is coming back in force. They're putting together a crisis squad. How quick can we get a crisis squad podcast with Matt Booty and Sarah Bond and fucking Phil Spencer and whoever they decide to host this bitch that will send them the most softball lead up to corporate boilerplate bullshit ass kissing like we got last time? Nobody's going to buy that anymore. The last one had already pushed past most people's limits. Nobody's going to have any sympathy anymore or any pain. Nobody's going to believe anything you say. And this isn't just, I don't even know how far away I got from my original. I don't care. I'm just on it. I'm on one right now. Just follow me on this one. Nobody's going to believe you. And when I say nobody, I don't just mean the people that are following games news online, which admittedly is a small portion of the entire games industry from the perspective of how many customers are out there. So I suspect that there is a gamble being done here with just, this will all go away. There's enough players to that don't care about any of this shit as long as we give them, their service games, and they'll just keep playing those games. I'm sure that comes into this a little bit. But nobody is going to trust you. Nobody's going to believe a word that comes out of your mouth. You're done. You're done. You were already on thin ice anyway. And a lot of people gave Phil Spencer a lot of leeway because people know that Phil is, generally speaking, and this also has been echoed again by many people in the industry that have worked alongside of him, even if they didn't agree with his business decisions, that say Phil is a good man with good intentions that sometimes doesn't make great choices. And I think at this point, personally, it's time to hold Phil's feet to the fire. I think he's fucked up. I think he hasn't shown the ability to lead this division any further. But at the same time, I'm getting off. Hold on. Before I get to that point, I'm so sorry. This video is going to be all over the place. I'm so sorry. And I don't know if I want to take the time to even re-edit this to make it make sense. Nobody's going to trust them. And perhaps most importantly, what the hell are the remaining small companies or developers under the Microsoft umbrella at whether it's under Bethesda or under Activision Blizzard or under Microsoft Game Studios? What are they thinking right now? They see Hi-Fi Rush get rewarded with the studio being shut down. What the hell are they thinking? What are the folks behind Senua Saga, Hellblade? That's coming up. That ain't selling shit. That's going to sell. It's not going to make its money back. There's almost no way. Not for the amount of time and resources put into this game. I'd be shocked if they did. And even if they did, apparently it doesn't matter. So what are they thinking? Are they thinking, well, shit, we better hit this one out the park one way or the other because it's probably going to be our last? The amount of trust internally right now, the morale across the entire portfolio is probably rock fucking bottom. It's terrible. And this is during a time where Xbox in a string has barely produced a single fucking game that has taken the market by storm, except for Hi-Fi Rush. It's nuts. So nobody's going to trust them. Now for Phil Spencer, especially. Listen, I've given Phil Spencer a long leash from my own perspective for a long while now, because I do believe that he cares. I do believe that he's one of the few people in a position like his that actually plays games, enjoys them, and wants to see the industry do well. That doesn't mean that he's always going to make or has made the best decisions. I think it's readily apparent that he does not always do that. But I do think he at least has his heart in the right place most of the time. And I do also believe that to a degree, I'm not going to remove all blame from Phil here. I think he finally needs to catch some heat from more than just a few people. But I think part of this is that especially after that Activision Blizzard buyout, I don't know how many of the Sarah Bond, Matt Booty, and Phil Spencer, how much are these three people even doing? Sarah only just got there, so it's kind of hard to like point at her too hard. But how much is really being done? And how much of this is Microsoft superseding them and just telling them outright, this is what's going to be done. You don't have any autonomy. Go do it. And then Phil, they know full well Phil's going to take more or less 100% of this, some of which is deserving and some of it is just because he's going to be the whipping boy. And I thought for sure that given how things had been going, that and with the leaks and whatnot that we've had and the lawsuit, what we got out of the lawsuit in terms of information, I was already pretty convinced that Phil was only going to be here until 2028 anyway. And then he at the latest, and then he was going to be gone. I think this today probably means that he's got an even shorter amount of time. I would be shocked if it wasn't a shorter amount of time. It feels like Microsoft is setting up Phil for removal. And again, he has a lot to answer for. He's in that position. So does Matt Booty, and so will too Sarah Bond. But man, does it ever suck to see these people sit up on stage time and again and say all these great things about all of their studios, and then they either have one mess up, like Arcane with Redfall. Pretty much like almost all the games previous, Prey, and then of course the Dishonored series, these were successful games. And I guess to a degree, almost in relation to the video I did before in which I was talking about game budgets being broken, Redfall was, I guess, too big, too expensive, and because it failed, now the studio gets folded. And that studio is filled with a lot of really talented people that on one mistake. And I mean, there's been information come up for Redfall where they wanted to like nix this thing ages ago. They knew it wasn't likely going to be successful or good. They didn't think it was, they wanted to be able to, reportedly, they wanted to be able to convert it back to a single player experience to salvage the project and not have it, become the inevitable bust that it was and cost them less money, I would presume, in the end. There are a lot of parts here that all seem to point to really poor management. And in fairness to them, I know I have praised Microsoft to a degree in that when they bought these studios up, they were relatively hands-off. There is definitely a line between being too hands-on when these buyouts happen, and it crushes creativity within studios that were already doing well without this new ownership. But then it also clearly there must be a happier middle ground, because in instances like Redfall, for example, Microsoft very well should have been able to point out and know that that was not going to go well and we needed to do something. Or they needed to do something. And they didn't. So, And yet, time and again, what do we get? At best, we get Phil Spencer saying something along the lines of, "Well, I'm not in a position to, not be able to run a profitable business," which is true. But what is the level of profit that we're expecting? And are people allowed to have any kind of mistakes? Because if so, and you own them, and you're putting certain direction on them from a distance and then walking away, you have to shoulder some of the responsibility. You can't just expect people to look at people like Phil getting paid buckets of fucking money a year while the company is floundering and only staying afloat because they keep spending enormous amounts of money to buy up studios, and be like, yeah, that's fine. That's okay. Microsoft posted like 20%, profit year over year. Xbox could find, they could find $70 billion to buy up Activision Blizzard King. But the one developer that hit every metric that they would have wanted and praised outwardly, very publicly for Hi-Fi Rush, the kind of gift to the industry to a degree from Shinji Mikami, for the younger devs within the studio to be able to go on and do some creative stuff, and then they do it, and they do it well, and they win all these awards, and it sells well, and it gets onto the new platforms, and everyone's thinking, well, there's, if Microsoft's putting this on other platforms, this has to be a good sign. There's support there. No. Gone. Folded. That's insane. All trust is eroded from, I believe, the community. Whoever, and when I say that, I mean the community that's keeping track of any kind of news like this, which again is a small portion of the entire community that's actually active in the video game market. But nevertheless, all that trust is gone. Nobody gives a shit about anything any of them have to say. And I'm sure everyone will be waiting with bated breath as Microsoft and Xbox come up with some sort of pity fucking tour to come out and talk about it. Because they have to. They can't ignore it. The whole internet's talking about their shit. I mean, Sony has got to be thrilled, right? Sony has to be fucking over the moon. Imagine Sony, if you will, who just, and again, in that video, if you want to see, I'll release the video or do a video on it as well, but I didn't want to co-opt the two or combine the two. But Sony this week, blowing up their golden goose and having historic moments on Steam and otherwise, in both in the negative and the positive, but then like just the sentiment around Sony during this time where they're trying so desperately to make this push to the PC, and they're just shooting themselves in the foot along the way, and everything is against them, and then Microsoft swoops in and says, "Don't worry, guys, I got this." Man, really? And then just the sheer irony of it all, of course, they have this like new controller that they announced or something that's basically like where the marketing for it was Feel the Burn, because like a controller that looks like it's on fire. Man, come on, you can't even make some of this shit up. But it really is upsetting. And I feel for all of these people. Like I said, from if you look at it cold hard logic, you can make almost, it's still tough, but you can almost make a case for Arcane. I still think they needed to be able to be given a chance after Redfall to do something on their own without being forced into this live service fuck show that we've been getting, that everyone's been forcing upon everyone else if they have the power to do so. And okay, Mighty Doom did reasonably well, folding that in. Not great. You don't want people to have to go through that, but you can see it. And they're just going into ZeniMax anyway. They're not, nobody. I don't think a whole bunch of people there are necessarily losing their jobs. Although I don't know with great certainty, but it seems like that's not the case. Right? Like you can understand some of it to a degree, but the one that really doesn't make any sense, is Tango. Because man, I mean, how long has Microsoft been trying to break into Japan or at least have a Japanese studio that supports them and provides them with great games? And they finally get it, and what do? And you know what's even more insane? More hilarious even. The irony so thick is that there's video of not long ago, I think it was around the time Sarah Bond was was it just before Sarah Bond stepped up into her current position? I think it was. I can't remember what part of marketing bullshit it was that they were doing. But Sarah Bond is on video talking about how back in the day when Microsoft cut Lionhead out of the picture, closed the studio down, people who made Fable. And how in hindsight, they talk about how in hindsight, how that was a bad idea. And that, and how they were looking at that so that they didn't make the same mistake twice. Well, guess what, Sarah? Here you are! Making the same mistake again! Except on this one, I feel like it's almost worse than Lionhead, insofar as that they had only just released a critically and otherwise acclaimed game that hit on all of the things that you guys wanted from them. You admitted as much. And you still closed them. You repeated it again. What do we get, like another vignette where in 5 years we look back and go, oh man, we said we learned with Lionhead, but we didn't. Shit. And then we did it again with Tango, and man, how do we not make that mistake again? Like I said, nobody believes you. All of you are lying. You be lying. And people are just not going to trust a thing you say. And I really do. I think the ones, I feel really bad for everyone affected by this on the studios that were folded or dispersed and whatnot and disrupted today. But as well, I feel for the people who are still there, who are in these other studios, who are under the Microsoft brand now, that none of them feel safe. If you're not at one of the big, let's call it 3, if you wanted to just pick 3 out of the air, under that brand, I think all of them are scared. All of them don't think that they're going to be around forever. Like some of them are expecting to be next. And I don't think this is over either. I think there's more of this coming. This was just like the audit for Bethesda. I think Activision Blizzard is next. And then after Activision Blizzard, I think they'll even audit underneath Microsoft Game Studios. But can somebody please explain to me how 343 Industry could fumble so hard for so long what was originally the flagship property in Halo, fumble it for so long and spend so much money and just be mostly left to their devices while this happens? I don't know, man. None of it makes any sense. I think it's a bunch of bullshit. I can't wait to see what Microsoft comes up with, what Xbox comes up with. I can't wait to see Sad Boy Phil come out. I've given Phil as much of a leash as I can. I'm not trying to say that Phil's a bad person. I think Phil's a great guy with good intentions, but he's made bad choices. And some of them I think are his own. Some of them I think are now coming down from above him. And he's going to unfortunately be the one to take the fall. Somebody always has to be the fall guy. Phil is undoubtedly going to be the fall guy. And if there was ever a reason for Phil to be stepping down, it's probably coming up relatively soon. Like I said, I still think he was only ever going to make it to 2027, 2028 in the first place. But this might expedite that process. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'm sure lots of you guys have lots of opinions on this. I didn't edit anything in or anything like that. I apologize. I don't have the willpower to add screenshots of tweets. If you guys need to see screenshots of tweets, I'm pretty sure you can find those relatively easily. Subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Again, let me know if you want to see a video on the a recap and some thoughts on Sony's blunder with Helldivers 2. But this is very easily cleared all that Sony shit. I mean, Sony got off the hook on this one because, my God, Microsoft, what in the hell are you doing? Thank you very much for watching, guys. Before I talk myself in circles, I appreciate you, and I'll see you soon. Peace.